Yes, and we are back. You are tuned in to the Last Mile Radio right here on Sirius XM. It's going down, Chris.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
extremely excited to announce who we got in the building right now.
Who do we have?
We got the one and only Aloe Blacc. He in the house like teeth in your mouth. It's real right now. It's real, man. Aloe Blacc, welcome to the Last Mile Radio, man.
Thank you so much. It's nice to be here.
Absolutely.
Great to meet you.
Absolutely. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show, man. Seriously.
Right
Yeah.
on. Right on.
Thanks for coming. We have a little bit of a history.
Yes, we do.
We first met, this was several years ago when you were coming up for the event that Richard Branson was co-sponsoring for Prop 62.
Yeah. Up in San Francisco.
It was in San Francisco to repeal the death penalty.
Mm-hmm.
Big initiative. And you were nice enough to do that and be part of that. And that's when I really started to realize that you were more than an artist. You're also an activist, which was super inspiring.
The real deal.
Yeah. And you've actually, there's a term, artivist.
Yeah, we use the term artivist.
Artivist,
I
yeah.
love that.
Yeah. I love it.
I love that.
And that's the first time I really heard that. And that makes so much sense.
Yeah, but I'm not the only one. I mean, there's a whole long line. There's a history of artivists, and
Right.
you know, when you have the passion for your art, but also the passion for humanity, you put those together, you combine them in your everyday life. And so, why not have a word that speaks to that reality?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it's so powerful. We did an interview with Layla Steinberg, on this show, and she was talking about how Tupac was utilizing ultimately he wanted to be an activist, but he was using his voice and his celebrity to get to that point. So it's interesting that you're actually doing a lot of that, where you're using, obviously, you're a talent.
Yeah.
And well-known person, but you're also, and you've made this very public about, you want others to use their voice like you do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would certainly say, as you mentioned, Tupac, evoking the name, rest in peace, that he was an activist first,
Right.
and he was also, how his humanity showed up, a brilliant artist. And because of the circumstances and the environment he was raised in and the people that he was groomed by in terms of political activism and ideology, he was able to translate his upbringing into the music. Different for me, I wasn't necessarily raised in an activist family.
Right.
Oh.
I didn't understand my parents' political leanings and ideology until adulthood, which was interesting because ultimately we all we espouse the same kind of thoughts and feelings. But I would say, radicalized by hip hop music, by artists like Public Enemy and Tribe Called Quest and N.W.A. And it gave me a sense of belonging to a struggle, and it also gave me a tool to use to express myself. And then I used hip hop to translate into singing so I can reach another audience.
Right.
And it's kind of been the way that I engage ever since I got signed as a major artist. I was doing it as an independent artist, but on a major label you get a lot more of a budget and a bigger megaphone. So my thought was, how can I use this to do the maximum amount of good?
That's big, man. That's big. That really just goes to show where your mind and heart is at, because the action follows. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. I kind of want to take it back a little bit. Can you walk us through that moment? You know what I mean? Like you said, you became radicalized through hip hop. Do you remember like what song, what time, like what that moment was when it was like, this is where I'm going to make this change and really step into this?
There was a song called Self-Destruction on the East Coast. Lots of different groups and crews, artists came together and did a song called Self-Destruction, talking about gang violence and in the streets. Then there was a West Coast answer to Self-Destruction called Same Gang. And it was all of the West Coast artists speaking about basically the same thing from the perspective of the West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
That really let me know there was something powerful about how music can be used and how artists can wield their voice and their influence to impact the streets, the neighborhoods, the communities, and the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you started to use that to become more active. and you got involved in criminal justice. Where was that starting point for you? What sort of made you recognize? We talk a lot about the school to prison pipeline.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Where did that really start for you?
There was a really important catalyst that introduced me to the concept of the school to prison pipeline. I had just signed, not just signed, I just had a big hit song called I Need $1. And it was massive around the world, and I was traveling, and I was feeling myself at the time, and I got some endorsements from different companies to be part of, the ambassador for watch companies and car companies. And then this liquor brand came and asked me to take some photos holding their liquor, and I did it. And then they put up posters and billboards across different parts of the city, and I got a phone call from one of my wife's friends, a family friend named Lucy Castro, and she was working at the time with an organization here in LA called Community Coalition of South LA. This is an organization started by the now mayor of LA, Karen Bass. Back then, she was a community activist, eventually became a decades-long public servant as a representative. And she said, Aloe, we see your posters all over town. I was like, yeah, it's great, isn't it? And I don't even drink. I just did it because, my dad's favorite drink. It was my dad's favorite brand. And I thought it'd be cool to send him a poster in a bottle.
Sure.
And she goes, no, it's not cool. She said, we're working on a campaign to shut down liquor stores in the community because there are too many. We don't even have fresh organic produce stores here. We barely have grocery stores.
Right, food deserts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hearing that, how did you feel? What was your response?
I mean, immediately I was like, I recognized that I was not paying attention to the depth and breadth of every action that I made. I thought that, I made it. Like,
Right.
I have a hit song. I'm getting money from these brands. They're putting my face up around so I get even more fame and more
Right.
popularity.
Sure.
And she just brought that all to the real level of what it really means to have this level of responsibility. What comes with this what I considered, this favor, this grace. It comes with a lot of responsibility. So she invited me to the Community Coalition to have a discussion. And as I was running late from home, got to the neighborhood, and was like, oh, I told my wife, we'll grab something to eat when we get there. And we're looking around, and it was nowhere that we felt comfortable having breakfast.
Wow.
Just nowhere. Nothing that felt healthy enough. Nothing that seemed like it would satisfy my hunger and need at that time. And so we got into the meeting, and I was like, where do you guys usually eat? They're
Right.
like, that's what we're talking about here. That's why we're trying to shut down these liquor stores so we can have more venues for actual restaurants where people can serve food that's healthy for the community, or have corner stores that are serving and selling, organic produce that's healthy enough to buy so that you can then cook at your house. And I said, there's an empty lot across the street. What's up with the empty lot? They're like, there's empty lots everywhere. Rich people buy them and they hold on to them, and they don't let anybody use them for the good of the community. We could at least put a community garden there, but they won't even let people use it. And so there was this discussion in that conversation about food deserts and food justice, about nutrition for the community, and they introduced me to the name Ron Finley, who is known as the Gangster Gardener. It'd be great to have him on the show at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
Who was working hard to transform the community by getting people to just plant food in the medians of the street, in the grass area near their homes, which they might not own the property, but according to the ordinance, they're responsible for maintaining that property. And he was. And through the relationship with Coco, I learned about what they called the school to prison pipeline. Specifically, an ordinance that they were working hard to reverse called willful defiance, which was a LA school district rule that allowed a student to be suspended for very, very minor actions. An instructor or a teacher could suspend a student for something as simple as tapping a pencil or wearing a hat backwards, wearing a hat.
Right. That's crazy.
And so the thing is, when you get suspended and you're in these affected neighborhoods, right? You are at the mercy of the neighborhood at that point. Right. You're not in the insulation and safe haven of the school. You are now subject to the leaders of the community, be it positive leaders or negative leaders.
100%.
And, that willful defiance ordinance would lead to students who ultimately didn't feel like going back to school or got caught up in the neighborhood, illegitimate markets.
Right.
And
extracurricular activities.
And would end up on the pipeline to prison.
That's deep. And obviously it impacted you to the point that you got moved to action. You know what I mean? So one thing we do on this flow, on this show, Aloe, man, we give flowers. You know what I mean? We definitely got to give people their flowers, man. That's something that I hope catches like a wildfire, giving people their credit when it's due. You know what I mean? So I definitely want to give you your flowers while you're here still to smell them. You know what I mean? For sure. So I commend you on that, man. Seriously. And I really hope people hear this and get encouraged enough to be moved to action, because you really doing it, man. And you showing what could be done, what the fruits of the labor look like, because that type of impact literally can change somebody's life and the trajectory of their livelihood. You know what I mean? So like that's quite literally, in my opinion, breaking the mold, man. So I commend you for that. Got to give you your flowers, man.
Thank you. Yeah, I think when I was moved to action, I recognized that, okay, I've got this opportunity to make a difference, and I'd already had that one hit. What could I do with another hit?
Right.
And so
seeing
as
the
I
power
was
of
putting,
your voice.
with the power of my voice, not just the voice, just there's an infrastructure, an entire system behind me, pushing my message. And so I'm really conscious of the message and the responsibility of making sure that a 3-year-old and an 83-year-old are going to have, sustenance from the message that I deliver. I got a chance to work with Pharrell Williams.
Oh, that's legendary.
Amazing producer, great songwriter. Just a very stand-up human being.
Absolutely.
And I knew that the value of working with him would be high. So I wanted to write a song that had its foundation in compassion, so that when the record label wanted to push it, we were pushing love and compassion. So we wrote a song called Love is the Answer. And then for the music video, again, I wanted to use the powerful infrastructure and resources to push this message. And, it could have been anything, but I chose to work with the narrative designed by Community Coalition around the school to prison pipeline and willful defiance. And we basically created a music video that's almost a PSA, speaking about how this particular ordinance doesn't serve the community.
Right.
And I think it tells a really powerful story in the music video. So if you get a chance, check it out.
Absolutely.
Definitely
check
that
this out.
So we last time I saw you, you were at Sing Sing.
Yeah.
And you were there for a graduation for Hudson Link. You do a lot of stuff people don't even know, but that was amazing. And you also, when you were there, you did a tribute to Harry Belafonte.
Yes.
Which is one of your mentors and idols, and who was also very active. How was that, what he did and that legacy, how did that inspire you?
Well, Harry Belafonte is an absolute hero of mine. When you think about who he was in the civil rights movement and how he showed up, there are very few others who can compare. as one of the first black men to have, a television show and to be on the big screen opposite white actress, he was instrumental in humanizing blackness to a white world that in many respects was hostile to, and then in some respects was welcoming to, but just not willing to stick their neck out, right? So he started to, in the same way that Jackie Robinson helped to integrate, and humanize blackness, and he was a face and a voice that was in white homes. He was also because he was in white homes, he was making money.
Absolutely.
Because the black population wasn't going to serve his income in the same way that the white population would, and with that money, he was able to fund and sponsor lots of the civil rights movement. When you think about an individual, an icon like Martin Luther King, and all of the amazing work that he did, you don't often think about, but you also have to recognize there is no income in activism.
Right.
So how is he feeding his family? He's got kids and a wife at home, right? And those grocery bills are paid for by donors, and in many cases, folks like Harry Belafonte, right?
That's powerful.
Security and private transportation and hotels,
which ain't cheap.
It's not cheap. Many times it is. So I look at that example and I recognize what Harry did and what legacy must continue. And I was honored as a Harry Belafonte fellow. And so one of his final wishes was to sing with the men at Sing Sing. And he was unable to because he was in later stages of life. And in his honor, I went to sing with the men at
Super
Sing
powerful,
Sing.
man. It was super powerful too.
Yeah.
Really powerful.
Man, it sounds powerful, man. Seriously, that's heavy. That's deep right there.
Yeah.
What a way to get the baton passed, right? Like that is so amazing to me. And as a fellow artivist, for sure, I gotta say, man, you inspire me personally, for sure. I want to talk about free.
Yeah.
I definitely want to talk about free, man. Utilizing your voice and your platform to really, see the needle get pushed. You know what I mean? In the way that it was. I think that was just incredible, man. Seriously. So like, I want to know, like, how did that come about? Like, what was the thought process behind that? What was the overall vision? And do you feel like, the vision manifested like how it was planned?
I think the vision did manifest how it was planned. A friend of mine, Van Jones, is an activist.
Shout out
to Van Jones.
Shout out Van.
Is an activist, has always been community focused, and has an organization called Cut 50 and the Dream Network and Dream Corps. And he was working really hard, diligently on this legislation to reduce the prison population. That's what Cut 50 is about. It's about cutting the prison population by 50%. And he worked hard across both Republicans and Democrats to get the kind of support needed to draft the legislation, to get it up to Congress, to get it signed, and then to get it to the White House to get it signed. The documentary that he ended up putting together, called The First Step, based on the colloquial term for the bill, the First Step Act, basically was the inspiration for the song. So he sent me this film and said, you know about the legislation that we passed. And of course I knew about it.
Right.
Because I had seen the picture of Van Jones in the White House with the president at the time.
Which is something you wouldn't expect.
And I didn't expect it.
Right.
But I recognized that this was a massive undertaking and a huge victory for people everywhere, for all Americans. And I was honored that Van Jones would ask me to write the song for the film. I watched the film, and immediately, what spoke to me was the hardworking people behind the scenes.
Right.
There are a lot of organizations on the ground across America that are doing this work to help returning citizens, to reduce recidivism, to shine a light on the insanity behind some of the rules and laws that keep people in cages. And writing this song was inspired by wanting to express how important it is for people to have their freedom, and that we all deserve our freedom. And one mistake, a minor mistake, a misdemeanor, a nonviolent offense, deserves an opportunity. Someone who has been convicted for a nonviolent offense deserves the opportunity to show that they can return home and be a productive citizen.
Absolutely. As a returned citizen myself, fun fact, but not so fun at all, I spent like literally a third of my life incarcerated, from the age of 17 to 26.
Mm-hmm.
And the visuals, first and foremost, the song is incredible. Beautiful song, first and foremost. I'm talking like the sonic sound, everything like is beautiful.
Yeah.
But the visuals on top of that really enhances it. And then you have returned citizens, speaking for themselves and telling their story and stuff like that. Like how did the thought process of incorporating that come about? Like that was incredible, but so powerful.
It's really, really based on, wanting to show the actual people who have been affected by these laws, and by circumstances. Nobody lands in jail because they want to go.
Right.
There's a whole probably generational cycle that's going on, and I wanted those voices to be part of the video, like Alice Johnson in particular.
Right.
Who got caught up in a system really just trying to feed her family. And there's no, you can't excuse someone's illegal activity, but you can understand it. And once you understand it, how can we then engineer society so that we don't have these kinds of disparities anymore? Right. I personally don't have a direct experience with the carceral system, but friends, family, and folks that I advocate for, I can see who they are. I can see their merit. And, in the music video, I wanted that to be expressed.
You mentioned that, Alice. It's interesting because there's always domino effects of this.
Mm-hmm.
Because Alice obviously was a recipient through Trump and through First Step Act and that whole process. She was also very instrumental in helping Michael Harry O'Harris, who is a friend of TLM.
Shout out Harry O.
We knew him inside, and obviously he's got a very sort of infamous history. But because of what Alice did, and because of all that action, he was actually commuted by Trump at the very last moment, and today doing phenomenal things in the community, right? So it just shows that these actions have very direct impact, and the domino effect can be very positive. Alice wasn't and isn't, a threat to public safety.
Yeah.
And now she's doing great things.
Yeah. I mean, it's obvious, very few of us are our worst mistakes, right?
Exactly.
And I would say none of us are, if we are given the opportunity to learn what the mindset is for growth and transformation and change. But that mindset is only one piece of the pie. It's the community and the surroundings, the environment around us. Can it foster that growth and development and contribution? And there's a long history of bias in communities where some communities get the resources and some don't. And the more that we can do to offer everyone just the very basic needs met, the better.
And you've gotten into the trenches to some degree. I mean, you're very deep into qualified
On the front lines.
immunity.
Yeah.
That's a big issue and controversial. So you're stepping out there. And how did your involvement there, as deep as it is, how did that evolve?
I think, like everyone else, I was really hurt and moved to action when I witnessed the police in Minneapolis murder George Floyd. And the question that boggled me was, why does this keep happening? Because as a youngster, as I said, I was radicalized by N.W.A. and listening to the songs from the past. N.W.A. talks about police violence
for sure
from the 80s, right? The riots and uprisings that had happened in the 60s and 70s, all of these are across the nation in different major cities as a response to police violence on Black bodies. And I was really in a state of confusion. I could not understand how this keeps happening. And so I had to do a little bit of a civics course on the internet and get to understand, okay, there's criminal law, and then there's a criminal lawsuit and charges, and then there's civil lawsuit and charges, two separate types of cases. And then I had a conversation with my best friend Brandon Paradise. He's a law professor at Rutgers University, and I said, why does this keep happening? How come people don't just sue? Why doesn't the lawsuit ever put a police officer in jail? They're like, Brandon said, a criminal lawsuit could potentially put a police officer in jail, but that's few and far between, because no district attorney is going to play against the constituency that they necessarily work for, that they ostensibly work for, which is the police force of that municipality.
Sure.
And in many ways, if the DA is an elected position, they can count on thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of votes from the police union and the police officers in order to win that position, if it's not appointed by a mayor or some other body. And so that's one thing. The other lawsuit would be a criminal lawsuit. A civil lawsuit. And in that lawsuit, there's a protection for federal agents and agents of the state in many state constitutions that qualifies them to be immune from responsibility. And that was a doctrine, a precedent set by the Supreme Court of the United States, where they basically perverted a civil rights statute that was supposed to protect citizens against police. It was literally written after police who were also Klans members had violated the rights of some clergymen, and it became a civil rights law, but the Supreme Court ended up perverting it and making a decision that ended up protecting the police, which means that every decision that gets made after, at the Supreme Court level and below, has to abide this doctrine, this precedent.
Wow.
And this is how convoluted and crazy our system is. For all of its benefits, right? The separation of powers and the check and balance, there are things that still occur that are left up to interpretation, and that interpretation is left up to the folks who are in place, and those folks in place could be serving an injustice to everyone with their interpretation.
Right.
So qualified immunity is this doctrine from the Supreme Court, and it basically gives a right of way to police officers And every state, all the 50 states have their own measure of immunity in some way. So not only
so
only
it's not even universal. That's my goodness.
It's federal and then it's state. So you have the opportunity potentially, if your civil rights are violated by a police officer, to sue in civil court for money, because that's pretty much the only remedy. And you have the opportunity to sue in federal court or state court, but you're up against this doctrine.
Right.
And most times, lawyers won't take the case. They are chilled because they know that the judge is going to throw it out because the defense will invoke qualified immunity.
Wow. That's heavy. That's scary.
It's scary. And the only way to fight it is to get citizens to be aware so that they can then influence and push their lawmakers, legislators, so representatives and Congress people, to write new laws that will then get voted on in Congress that can then get passed in their states and signed by the governor and or federally.
Y'all heard the process. We got to get it together. Definitely got to get it together, because that's crazy. That's scary when you really think about it. It's like the shield got a shield, if we will, right?
It's a massive shield. I think it creates a God complex because they understand that there is no criminal liability and there will be no civil liability. And so there is no fear. There's no deterrent. And at the end of the day, taxpayers pay their salaries and then we pay for their mistakes when a family gets millions of dollars because someone was killed. And that's only few and far between. That's a very small fraction of the people who are actually violated by police. Nobody gets money for the most part.
That is, man, that right there is just mind blowing. So I want to move forward a little bit, right? Clearly, you are serious about your activism. You're clearly heavily involved. You clearly, have the know-how of how to navigate. I want to know what's fresh for you right now. What's at the top of your agenda, at the forefront of your mind, what needs to be tackled and where your focuses are today? I'm
still focused on transforming the relationship with communities and safety and helping to push meaningful and sensible legislation that is going to make communities safer, that is going to offer every citizen an opportunity to have justice, whether they are violated by another citizen or a citizen with a badge. And at the same time, with my music, I found that there are so many amazing organizations doing the hard work on the ground for their communities.
Anybody you want to shout out?
There's an organization called Breakthrough that's doing anti-recidivism work. And very recently, a few weeks ago, I released a song called Never Let You Down for an organization called Big Brothers Big Sisters of America. They are creating mentorships for youth who may not have a big brother or big sister, a dad or a mom in the house, and looking for someone that can spend time with them and show them, the way through life. That's a huge deal because with that kind of mentorship, a lot of folks would steer clear of the carceral system.
I agree.
So I've committed myself to using my voice to write songs for these organizations. So I wrote one for Big Brothers Big Sisters called Never Let You Down. It's out now. And then I wrote one for Breakthrough. I'm working on the production and recording soon. And then they're going to be a series of organizations going from there.
That's what's up.
I think we might have a duet here, maybe for
the
last mile. Maybe.
Hey,
might have to do something.
All
here.
for that, for sure. Again, definitely, I would consider myself an artivist as well, for sure. Serious about the cause, and I let the talent speak for itself. I ain't gonna really speak on myself in that kind of way. I let it speak for itself.
We'll check it out later,
for sure.
Right. So a question. As you know, the Last Mile does work inside. We teach computer coding and software engineering skills. We launched audio video production as well.
Yep.
So we're trying to train those in different industries. And SiriusXM is one of our lead sponsors as well, which is really awesome. And we're relatively new. We launched this a couple of years ago. We've been doing the coding for now 9 years. But seems there a real interest within music and entertainment. You're obviously a big spokesperson. How can we rally more in this industry to be actively involved, not necessarily in the front lines, but hiring and getting more involved in inclusion of this community?
Oh, wow. Awareness. I think it all starts with awareness, and knowing that there is access to the community. So, there's an organization that kind of regrouped in the wake of George Floyd's murder called the Music Artists Coalition, and there's the Black Music Artists Coalition as well, where we recognize the amount of power we have as a community, the music community, and when things are brought to our attention, we can use the power of the community to then use our massive influence in social media to make some sort of change. So I would say, awareness, pass along all of the links and the assets for social media, and let's see what the artist community can do to spread the word, but then also not just spread it, but heed the word and invite this community into production.
We plan to do a talent tour next year. We're literally going to take a tour bus across the country. And I know you've been inside a lot. Mm-hmm. You've seen talent inside.
Yep.
We record that talent and have our students who are inside mixing.
Yeah.
Going to be doing all the production.
What's the name of the talent show?
What's going to be a talent tour?
Talent tour.
Unnamed yet?
Unnamed. I got the name.
Okay.
What's the name?
What is it?
Bars.
Oh. All right, go live.
Who's got the domain right now?
On the real. We might have to give some
You
credits
got to do it. You got to
like
do it like that. I mean,
bars
right.
with a Z or with an S.
However you want. You get the idea though.
Okay, bars.
Absolutely.
But are you going to take a leg on the tour?
Yeah. I mean, let me know when you're
Sure.
ready. Let's do it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Let's do it because we're going to have a song, so we have to.
Exactly. We got to do it on tour.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's only right. Definitely.
So you and John Legend for sure.
Yeah. And, who else has been active? There are many artists have been active.
Yeah.
I believe in San Francisco when I performed, it was, oh, wow. His name is escaping me as I'm trying to think of his name. I should say Common has been active as well.
Well, when you performed, Michael Fronte was with you.
That's what I was picturing, the
Yes.
dreadlocks
Right,
and the bare
exactly.
feet.
Yeah.
And I've been on a stage with Michael Franti and also on his podcast. He's a wonderful human being and he cares deeply.
Yep.
So he would also be wonderful to join.
Yep. We'll create a list, but you've got one of the legs reserved already today.
That's right.
Yeah.
We're locking you in for sure, definitely. Well, one thing we like to do, because it's almost about that time, one thing that we like to do to close, it's one question we ask all our guests. And I know it's many things, many things that we can change. But if you could just change one thing in our current system, what would that be and why?
Well, if there's one thing I could change in our current system,
I know that's a tough one.
it's really tough. And when you say system, I'm thinking holistically, not necessarily just the carceral system.
For sure.
But what it comes down to is jobs. And, if I could wave a magic wand and everybody had gainful, meaningful employment, that could transform so much across underserved communities. Because just having a place to go where you know that you're offering the best of you and the community is better for it, transforms the way that you see yourself and everybody who sees you sees themselves.
Absolutely. That's incredible.
That's so spot on. I mean, that is our mission,
Mm-hmm.
to create the ability, marketable skills that lead to gainful employment. And there's really 3 boxes: jobs, housing, and community.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And TLM, we've got, hundreds and hundreds of people out there now, and it's kind of an organic community.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of jobs and the ability to do that, we're sort of on the front line of fair chance hiring. There's more and more companies that are stepping up. It's fairly recent, to be honest, as you know. But now you've got Fortune 500 companies that are now willing to start hiring.
Yeah.
And that's for the first time for us, because we've been at this for a while, to see that momentum shift. So you nailed it with, I think that's the most important thing as well.
Yeah.
Definitely.
When the Fortune 500 companies are doing their hiring, are they hiring into their, what's the system that they're hiring into?
Yeah, well, we're creating a lot of that where they create fellowships or internships, where they can get mentoring and use some of the skills that they've learned and really upskill them. So it's a starting point.
Right.
In many of
great start though.
Yeah, it's a great start. So they start a fellowship, and then at the end of that, they have the opportunity to hire them full time, which most do.
Mm-hmm.
Like our employment rate today is 81%. It's pretty high for those who are coming out of our programs formerly incarcerated.
Yeah.
So, we want to continue to do that and encourage more companies. And that's why I mentioned in the entertainment business, there's a lot of opportunities for folks that have the skills to start as a PA or start anywhere and learn.
Absolutely. So just to get a sense of it, is it when you say fellowship, is it coming from, let's say, the corporate's philanthropic giving bucket, or is it?
It's coming.
It's employment bucket, HR.
Employment bucket.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. We do some subsidizing as well.
Yeah.
But it's .com, not .org.
Okay.
So that's where we need to be.
Yeah.
Right. .org is great, but you need the businesses, the real businesses, to be hiring and be serious about it.
Right.
Okay.
That's our mission.
Fantastic.
And I think when it happens, they all will be pleasantly surprised. I think one of the reasons how we even got in this situation in the first place, with the lack of fair chance hiring and things of that nature, is the overall misunderstanding of the people behind those walls. You know what I mean? I think first and foremost, when people see the people behind those walls as people, for starters,
Mm-hmm.
and then secondly, really understanding the capabilities, but ultimately, the mind frame that developed and was cultivated behind those walls, in the sense of really being hungry, that sense of appreciation and gratitude once you get put in these type of positions that might be very different from somebody that didn't experience that. You know what I mean? That sense of loyalty, just that overall drive is just very, very different. And I think the production for whatever industry, somebody of my experience might go through, you know what I mean? Like that production in comparison to somebody that hasn't, I think it's going to be evident.
Absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of people in very high positions who are not as hungry or as smart as some of the folks who are behind the walls. So it'd be great. It'd be great to be involved in helping that transition and give people opportunities so they can show and compete.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Well, thanks again for taking your time. As E says, many jewels dropped.
Oh, for sure. But dropping jewels, for sure. It was raining game today, y'all. It was raining game, for sure.
We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you